Hello and welcome. We are now on our third series in this workshop of career exploration and some graduate school options. So thanks again for joining. My name is Jason Aylmer with the University of Maine Graduate School, Graduate Student Recruitment Specialist. And again, here we have Lisa Carter from the Career Center.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back here today. All right, you want me to just jump on in? Let's do it. So today we are going to talk about networking and talk about how that is important today, and also thinking about how that how to look at that from kind of where we're at right now in the current phase of things, that we're pretty much in a virtual world right now, as well as thinking about how that can relate to using it for potential and prospective students for the University of Maine grad school. So we're going to just jump on in. So let's talk about what is networking, why is networking important? And so networking is really creating a personal and professional network of people that you're interacting with. And it can be extremely important because expanding your network of people that you know and interact with can create connections in the career and professional world that you may not have had before. And honestly, you may not even know how it's affecting you. But it's really good to think about kind of extending yourself so that you can start interacting with more people. And networking, just to be really honest, has some people find it uncomfortable, while others just completely revel in it. And so if you're not the type of person that loves interacting with people and talking with people and making those connections, I would encourage you to find little ways that you can expand and create your network. And I'll give you some tips and tricks today. Because networking can really increase your chances of making those connections that may get you ahead in a career or a professional role. So if you're a networker and you love it already, great. And if you're not, then I would encourage you to think about, try to adopt some of these things that I'm talking about today and see how you can kind of weave them in to what you're already doing to make yourself more perspective to, applying for jobs or applying to grad school and those types of things. So I guess let's start a little bit about kind of tips and tricks for networking. So how can you extend yourself out to meet more people or connect with more people? And I think that honestly, it's not a real brain buster here. It's kind of simple things that we all know how to do, but we just need to take advantage of how we do them. So getting yourself involved in your community is a great way to start. And that could be volunteering, that could be going to community events, that could be being a part of kind of the Chamber of Commerce, or, kind of interacting with different companies and organizations around your community. I think that it's important to think about what career fields interest you and how can you get more information about those career fields. So can you connect with people to do informational interviews? And informational interviews are where you simply are just interacting with someone who is working in a field that you want to find more information about. I think that when you start networking, it's important to be persistent, but not to be a pest, right? So, don't be that person that is constantly emailing, being like, I want to talk to you, I want to set up a time to meet with you, or it's just kind of constantly pestering somebody. But it is important to be confident and go after what you're looking for. So if you really want to have that informational interview with a nurse practitioner because you're interested in getting into that field, or a veterinarian technician, or a lawyer, or whatever it might be, because you're interested in a new field, or switching things up, or making a transition. So think about being persistent to make those connections, but not being a pest. Let's see, other ways to continue networking. Going to career fairs, using kind of our online world. So I guess to transition a little bit, I find that a lot of people are really connected today on Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media platforms, that now that we're in this COVID-19 world, making that transition to kind of networking virtually isn't so much of a jump. And so if you don't have a LinkedIn account, it's probably something that you should have. And I think one of my pieces of advice would be that whichever social media platform that you would like to participate on, and I do recommend that you pick one, that you should really try to make the best of it. Don't go on once every 6 months, go on once a week if it's not your thing, or if it is your thing, go on daily and try to create some really interesting and meaningful connections. So I think on that note, let me just pull up my LinkedIn profile and talk about a couple tips and tricks. And it's similar to Facebook to a certain degree. I think for me, LinkedIn has a bit more of a professional feel and an air to it. And so that's why I would recommend using LinkedIn. So let me pull it up and share my screen. All right. So, nothing too eye-opening here, but it is important to think about what your LinkedIn profile looks like to everyone else. So you want to make sure to have a somewhat professional looking photograph. You want to have a photograph here in the background. There's this kind of, it looks almost like a blue constellation type background, and whenever I see those on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, well, that person didn't really take the time to fully develop their profile. You do want to see what it shows right here, and it's limited to a certain number of characters, and so making sure that that reflects kind of who you are. And I think about this space that I have highlighted right here, where it says career counselor at UMaine, PhD student in higher education, blah blah blah. A lot of people see a connection here with that, along with kind of what may be at a top of a resume. And so you want this to kind of describe who you are and what your profile would look like. And then to continue down your About You section, you can see where it kind of starts to go where it says see more. So make sure that what you have in that About section, that the first 2 sentences are really important so that people don't have to click the more. And if they do click the more, that's great, and there's more information about you, but you want to be really cognizant of those like first 2 sentences and what they can really convey about you if people are quickly going through your profile. So one other thing I want to share about LinkedIn real quick is making those connections with people. So if you go to, let's say, go to home, or go up to my network. When you do make connections, so going down here and thinking about it where it says people you may know, and it's going to give you a whole host of suggestions, and Facebook will do the same. Instead of just clicking connect right here, because all that does is that sends them basically like a connection message that says, Lisa Carter wants to connect. They may not know who I am. And especially if I'm looking to connect to people that I don't know, or that, I might know on the fringes who I'm trying to get more information about, I'm going to click into their profile. So let me find somebody who I want to look at their profile. Let's see. We'll go in here and look at this person named Kevin. And so if I want to connect with him, I'm going to send him a message instead of just clicking connect, because I want to say, hey, whoops. So if I say connect, it'll pop up a message symbol. So I guess you can, once you're in the profile, then you can connect. But in that message, this is where it's really important, because you want to say, hi, Kevin, or hi, Mr. Tashiro. I am really interested in learning more about, your organization or what you do for your career, and, ask maybe for an informational interview, or just say that you'd like to connect. So I think that's really important when you're trying to connect with people that you don't know or that you don't really know well, is to make sure that you're adding a little bit of some text in there for context for people. So LinkedIn is a fabulous platform to connect and make these network connections. So I would encourage you to think about setting up a profile if you don't already have one. All right, back. So so that's LinkedIn for you. And then I think some other ways to think about networking and creating that professional group of people that you interact with. It can happen in college. It can happen with your professors. It can happen with advisors. All of these people are people that you want to stay in contact with, who they might become references later on, which is really important as well. If you have an internship, if you have a summer job, thinking about staying in touch with these people, because you never know who knows who, especially here thinking the state of Maine, everyone knows everyone, to a certain degree. And so you want to keep those connections fresh. You want to be polite, you want to be professional. So when you're thinking about potentially making and keeping those connections, it can really apply to possibly looking into go to grad school. So oftentimes when you're looking into a graduate program, you want to do your research, you want to look into what the college or the department is all about. You want to see who the faculty are that work there. Look over their CV that's usually posted on the website. See what type of research they've done. Does that connect or align with you? And then you may want to reach out for an informational interview with a faculty member, and they may end up being, you may have an interest in having them be a faculty advisor for you if you end up wanting to go to grad school and get accepted. So this networking can really, it can take you in a lot of places. It can work currently if you're a current student and you want to network to get internships or summer jobs. It can work if you're a prospective student wanting to go to grad school. And it can also be really helpful if you are in a career that maybe you don't want to be in anymore, or you want to, make a change or investigate a new, prospective job. So it can be really, really useful, but you do have to kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit and make those connections. And right now, I would say that LinkedIn is a great way to do it, being online. But I mean, as you saw, there are other ways to do it as well. So I think that Jason's going to talk a little bit more about networking specifically in grad school. So I'll let you take it away, Jason. Or if you have anything that you want to add, feel free.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was great information. And as you mentioned, really, looking at it from sort of the grad school perspective, we're going to do a sort of a deep dive in how some of the things that Lisa touched on are important, specifically when it comes to potentially looking at somebody to be your faculty advisor, and then looking into the different assistantships that we have. So we'll jump into our University of Maine Graduate School website. So the first thing we're going to take a look at here are our programs. So let's say, so this again, section you can search here. You can search by whether it's on campus, online, the degrees offered. There's a whole bunch of different ways to search. But let's say you were interested in doing the Biological Sciences PhD program. So we have sort of a little quick summary page here about some of the different specializations you can take a look at, a little bit about the department, the contact for the graduate coordinator, and then this jumps into the school's actual website. And a lot of programs, especially in the STEM fields, they ask you to identify and connect with a faculty advisor before even applying. So how does one go about doing that? And what does that look like? And what are some tips and tricks for making that work for you? So a couple different options. Again, we're looking here potentially for someone who'd be interested in the Biological Sciences PhD program. For this school, biology and ecology, they have something called research focus clusters. So you can take a look at the areas that are of interest to you to study, something you maybe had some lab experience in, whatever the case may be. And then you would click here for a list of the faculty members. And as Lisa alluded to, when you go and click on their details here, you get to learn all about them, how to contact them, their research topics. Some of them may list in here whether or not they are accepting students for the upcoming term. They might say, yes, I'm accepting new students, or no, I'm not. So you can pay attention to that as well. Some more details about their research. So this section often operates sometimes if they don't have a separate CV as their CV with all the things that they've, publications they've done, again, the research, those sorts of things. So, the first step would be, again, it may depend a little bit whether you're looking to apply and you haven't been to UMaine. If you're already a current student or an alum, the chances are you may already know some of these faculty members, or you may have had a class with them. And that's such a huge leg up when it comes to these sorts of things. If you are, a current student and you haven't had a chance to connect with graduate faculty members, I highly recommend it. You may not know that your biology, 435 professor is actually, a graduate professor and/or might be the graduate coordinator. So it's really great to get to know the faculty within the school, within the programs that you're interested in, because they already have had a chance to get to know you for the most part. They may have seen your work. Maybe you've worked on some sort of research project. Maybe you've had lab experience with them. And that is really important when it comes to kind of determining and figuring out, if you'd be a really good fit for whatever program that you're interested in. So again, where you're looking at programs that want you to make that faculty advisor connection, a great way, if you're not already familiar with that professor, is to really take a deep dive into what they have done and what they're currently working on. Maybe connect, if you are an undergrad student, connect with your current advisor and say, I'm interested in this program. What can you tell me about this professor? Can you make a connection? So, doing your homework, doing your research is really important when it comes to finding that faculty advisor. So what we'll do now is we'll take a little bit of a transition into looking at assistantships. So, when you're looking to work with a particular, faculty advisor, a lot of those times those STEM positions are tied to either some sort of assistantship, whether it's research or teaching assistantship. And really anybody who attends graduate school, whether it's in a STEM program or not, we also have graduate assistantships that are working in some sort of professional office space for the most part. So we're going to jump in and take a look at that, what that kind of looks like, and really how that can help you. So we want to go to our funding section here. And for students that are looking for funding, we'll jump in here. And this is, again, a great section. We can look at fellowships, scholarships, those sorts of things. Right now, we're going to take a dive into assistantships. So for those who aren't familiar, there's kind of, three main categories when it comes to assistantships. We have TAs, which are teaching assistants, RAs, which are research assistants, and GAs, which are graduate assistants. So for TAs, the teaching assistant, it's pretty self-explanatory. Some programs, when you are first accepted into the program, you automatically become a teaching assistant. For some programs, it's optional, and you might write an additional essay, for example, in the English department, if you're interested in being a teaching assistantship, that explains why you're qualified or why you're interested. So there's a couple different ways. Again, the department's webpage, the graduate coordinator will be able to kind of walk you through, which mechanism it is to get into one of these assistantships. But for teaching assistantships, that particular field could be something that you do, your first year. It could be your second year. Some departments mix it up, so it is a little different depending on where you land. Same with research assistants. Sometimes, you might do a year teaching and then do a year of research, or vice versa. And then, of course, there's the graduate assistantships, which I'll talk about in a moment. But primarily for any of those, what is considered full-time usually is 20 hours of work, whether it's teaching, research, or graduate assistantship work, again, in some sort of off professional office setting. So you're looking at a 20-hour per week work commitment. And in exchange for that, your tuition is waived, and you receive some kind of stipend that helps cover things like living expenses, books, those sorts of things. So it's a really great way to get in, go to grad school, and have your education covered for doing some sort of work. So thinking about that too as well, as we get into looking about how to get into some of these positions, the focus really is that it is work, it is a position, it is a job at the end of the day. And again, the networking piece that's so important about this, just like Lisa had talked about, whether it's looking for changing a career or you're just beginning your career, it does a lot of times come down to who you know. So as we looked at earlier, when you're reaching out and connecting to a potential faculty advisor, for the most part, a lot of those positions are also tied to some sort of teaching or research assistantship. When it comes to graduate assistantships, those are a little different because those will often be in departments other than the program that you're in. So for example, let's say you were interested in our Global Policy Master's program. The students in that program that have graduate assistantships are working in other professional offices like financial aid, or even here at the graduate school. We have 7 graduate assistants in our office that do all kinds of different things. Their 20 hours a week are spent on marketing and student outreach and record keeping and those sorts of things. So there's some really fun and engaging work, and similar to applying to any sort of job. When we get to take a look at the positions here in a minute, you want to be thinking about what's a good fit for you, what are you interested in, and ultimately what potentially do you have experience in that can really kind of make you stand out as a good candidate. So when we're taking a look at the graduate assistantship positions here, oh, by the way, there's some other very specific type of assistantships as well here that you can take a look at too. I think there's a couple of them have 4 or 5, there's maybe 6 or 7 positions altogether that are tied to those there. So when we're looking at the graduate assistantships, again, keeping in mind that you're wanting to have this be a really formal sort of job application presentation. So here are a couple examples of what is currently available in the assistantship, graduate assistantship realm. So we're just going to click on this program, this position here. And as you can see, it is laid out just like any sort of job posting, where it's going to be, primary responsibilities, your qualifications. One thing to note here is very important that applicants must be admitted to the graduate school program and be enrolled. So although you may be really excited and find a graduate assistantship that makes sense for you, if you are not already accepted into a program, it is not going to make sense to apply to one of these positions yet, because the folks that are making these decisions want, it has to be somebody that's already been accepted into a program. So that doesn't hurt potentially, if you want to reach out, and I'll put my contact information up so that you can connect with me if you have questions, or you want to get connected with somebody in the hopes that you will be a graduate student and maybe have some questions about some of these positions. We can definitely tackle that. But when you go to actually apply, send in your resume, send them your cover letter, you want to make sure that you are an accepted student. Another thing to note for the graduate assistantships is that due to the way that the funding works for some of these, it actually comes through the federal work study program. So as a grad student, you want to make sure you're filling out your FAFSA and coordinating with the folks in the financial aid office to see what you're eligible for, because quite a few of the graduate assistantship programs, that the positions, that funding is tied directly to federal work study funds. So definitely figure that out ahead of time. And again, if you have any questions, they do have some contact information here on who you can contact on the financial aid end. As we're kind of wrapping up what this position looks like, it tells you, sort of how long it is. Some graduate assistantships have the option of carrying on to the summer if you're looking to stay on, maybe do some research, take a class over the summer. There's some different rules and requirements for what that looks like on staying engaged and taking a class. You have to take at least one class in order to continue on. Another thing that is also part of some of these assistantship programs is that it does allow you, sometimes your funding for your insurance is paid for as well. So that it is another fantastic option as well, or at least partially covered. So definitely take a look at all of that. And jump back in here. So we're going to wrap up in just a moment here. We're going to answer some questions. Was there anything, Lisa, you wanted to add? Any thoughts or comments while we were chugging along?
No, I don't think so. I think you you did a great job of covering it. We well, maybe I'll add one thing. We also on our website have a sign into a career services platform, um, which is called Career Link, which also will have some graduate assistantships posted. So
Ah,
so you
yes.
can kind of look in either place. So, but yeah, I think that's all
Perfect.
I have to add.
Wonderful. Well, we will jump into our questions real quick. So number one, do you have any tips on what should be covered when introducing myself and giving my elevator pitch to a potential faculty advisor? So I will attempt to answer that, and I'll defer to Lisa if she has anything that I missed. So that's a good question, and we do get that. We do get that a lot. So I'd say you can look at it at two different ways. If you are coming into this where you're don't have a relationship with the University of Maine yet, and you found a faculty advisor that looks like a really great fit for you, I would say to look at two things. Number one, you know, you can think of your email that you're going to send to them really as a cover letter. You know, you want it to be professional. It should highlight kind of, you know, what you've done academically. You know, make them aware, you know, in your writing that you really understand what their research is all about, and then explain why you would be a good fit for that. What you're bringing to that, whether it's lab experience, maybe you've had some white papers published, whatever the case is. So help them see you in that role, basically. I would say. Does that sounds good? Hit all the points?
I think that sounds good. And if you, you know, the next question I see is kind of extending that potentially to thinking about networking with people, maybe outside of that faculty or research role. And I think that what you said, Jason, is important. And you know, if you're wanting to do, say, an informational interview with someone or learn a little bit more about people in a certain career sector, or possibly connect with current graduate students and see what their experience is like, I think it's important to just, you know, a couple sentences about who you are and what interests you, possibly what you're doing currently and why you have an interest in learning more about whatever type of information you're trying to garner from this person. And it doesn't need to be long. It does need to be professional. So I would definitely echo what Jason said there. And then just, you know, requesting a little bit of time. It could be a quick phone call. It could be, you know, an email that has a few questions in it. It could be a quick Zoom, you know, just something quick and easy. But most of the time, people are really willing to share that part of who they are, and they're usually willing to help others who are interested in getting into that field. So it's been my experience, at least.
Yes, and we'll share our email information. I would say, you know, in regard to the question about is it possible to connect with a current grad student in assistantship to learn about their student experiences? It's our graduate email address is just graduate@maine.edu. Our graduate assistants man that inbox, and all of them are graduate assistants, and they would be happy to sort of discuss what that looks like. It's really great and kind of a unique setup in our office where we have more than one graduate assistant, and they're all from different programs. So you can, you know, the chances are you might have someone that is even going into the same program you are. So again, it's just graduate@maine.edu. That's a great option. The next question is, do you have any recommendations on how to stay in touch with faculty members after graduation in case you want to use them as a reference letter? So that is really important. whether you're looking to take a little time off or you're, applying somewhere or whatever, keeping those references, whether it's going on to another grad program or for a professional reference for a job, is really important. And I think, you can look at it a couple different ways. You can, if you are, so let's say you're working and you're volunteering in a lab or something, and you want to keep them updated, you can almost send them, they're obviously have super busy professional and personal lives and all that. So it could be every 6 months or maybe even once a year, depending on what your schedule is and how quickly you want to get back into school or looking to apply to a job. But you can make sort of a professional newsletter if you want, and send it off to a couple different folks and say, hey, I'm or you can, and you could personalize it for them and share an anecdote about how whatever you learned tied back into something, that you've now uncovered in your professional life. But definitely, continue to keep that connection. Email them, let them know what you're doing, share your highlights, your experiences, all sorts of things. Let's see. Are you going to add something to that?
Maybe. I think it's also important to also let faculty members know of your intentions of hoping to use them as a reference while you're still currently in school. And so in that way, they just know that you value them, and that you ask their permission of, using them as a potential reference in the future, obviously letting them know that you'll contact them before you do so. But I think that kind of front loading the situation a little bit. And you mentioned it too. It's like everyone's busy. No one needs a weekly or monthly update on your life. But I think it's good, every 6 months, every year, something along those lines. It's good to keep those connections.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties into this next question about advice for maintaining professional relationships with past teachers or supervisors. And, I think it is about keeping them updated. There's things like Facebook and stuff that people, oftentimes will overuse about updating. I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich this morning. It was so exciting. So I think dialing some of that down will help. Like when you are putting something out there, it's an important milestone. I did. So I think sharing with them those sorts of exciting things, seeing how things were going with them. You never know, in addition to a relationship, especially when it comes to the past teacher, when you sort of put your networking hat on, you never know that it could be somebody that they have worked with. It could be somebody that, their cousin is their boss, who knows, as Lisa mentioned, in Maine, it's a very small place. So I think, you definitely want to be mindful of all of that, and continue to give them those sort of pertinent updates about your life and where you're going professionally, whether it's going back to school or what have you.
That's why I really like LinkedIn, because I think that it's a great way to stay connected with people about what you're doing professionally. Have you changed careers? Have you changed to a new company or an organization? Have you decided to go back to school? And I think it's important to keep your LinkedIn profile updated on some of those professional events that have changed in your life. And I think it's really easy to connect with other professionals on that platform. Again, Facebook does work similarly. But for some reason, I find LinkedIn just a bit more along the professional side of things. So.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions out there? That is it. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in. This will be on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. And we, would love to hear from you if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns. But look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.